Hello, everybody. My name is Peter, and I'm going to be your session host. Now, in a minute, I'm going to be handing over to our guest speaker, Marjolein. But before I do, just a very quick housekeeping note. Please feel free to use the chat function to share comments or insights, and the Q&A channel to ask questions. I'll be looking at that all of the time. And we do have an offer. So one of our sponsors, Pact, has been saying that there's some ebooks you can win for some participation. So please do take advantage of that. So then, to introduce Marjolein, Marjolein has 4 years of experience in software testing and 2 years testing in a low-code application environment. And she's a thought leader and leads the company chapter on testing low code. This year has seen her maiden voyage in the world of conferences, and she's shared her knowledge on testing at Kiev 2021 and on test automation. Today, Marjolein's talk is entitled, Does Low Code Mean Low Testing? Now, some of you may be familiar with an expression, cheap, fast, or good. You can pick 2 out of 3. But Marjolein's talk will explore, is it possible to have all 3 in a low-code environment? So without any further delay, Marjolein, I'd like to hand over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Then I'll start sharing my screen. Let's see. This one. So, hi, everybody. First of all, welcome at TestCon 2021. I'm Marjolein Pordon. And like Peter said, this is my maiden voyage in the world of conferences and talks. I had a talk at Testing Stage in Kiev together with a coworker, but that was pre-recorded. And Test Automation Days sadly didn't go through this year, so that will be in March that I'll have a talk there. But before I introduce a bit more of myself, what to expect today in my talk. I've been working as a low-code quality consultant for 2 years now. In that time, I've seen issues with low-code development and invented an approach to deal with or even prevent these issues. Before I will dive into that, let's start with who am I? So, like Peter said, I am 4 years working in software testing. I started as a trainee at Squarist. And in 2 years, I've been working with low-code projects. I loved it and talked a lot about it with my manager and coworkers. This got me the position of chapter lead and thought leader on low-code within the company. It also got me the nickname Lady Low-Code because I don't seem to shut up about low-code and with such passion that everyone wants to know more about low-code. So, what is low-code? Let me show you. Disney started it long before it was named low-code. At first, before computers, animations were expensive to make. So Disney started to reuse their drawings. Use the basics of the drawings, customize it to the story and the characters and their surroundings. As I will show you in these movie clips, it was simple, fast, cheap, and good. Simple because the drawings were there already and only needed adjusting to the story. Fast because no time was wasted by designing and drawing the animation from scratch. Cheap because reuse of drawings saves time and therefore money. And good because did you ever notice this while watching Disney animations? Here you see the reuse of a few parts of scenes from Robin Hood, Snow White, and the Aristocrats. Different background, different characters, but in the base, the same drawings. In low-code, we would call these models. Models can be reused and customized to the clients. Another example is Winnie the Pooh and Jungle Book. Here you see a complete scene reused. Again, with different backgrounds, but the same movement, the same rock, and the same branch. So Disney got the simple, fast, cheap, and good in reusing drawings. But can low-code also keep this promise? So low-code promises a system built simple, fast, and cheap as well as good. So let's check them out one by one. Simple, because without code, but with standard blocks and widgets that you drag and drop, you build an application. This is also known as citizen development. Everyone who knows how to use the platform can build applications, and the platforms are easy to use. Fast, because you don't need long courses to learn how to build, and you build by drag and drop without need of complicated preparations and documentations. Cheap, because you save time and because you save on expensive developers. And good, because they provide good quality of standard blocks and widgets. That's their promise, but is it true? This all comes together in the philosophy of low-code. They provide a library stocked with standard blocks and widgets, and with these you build your app. Maybe you'll need something and it's not found in the library. Then you will have to leave a request, and when there are more of the same request, the platform will develop it and add it to the library. Till then, you will have to adjust to the limitations of the platform. The standard is the norm, not the users or clients' needs are the norm. You can also request customization, but this will be costly and not without risks. Customization asks for the expertise of developers and you'll have to pay for their work. So, to add things up, I'd like to give you two examples. One of a company understanding and embracing the philosophy completely, and one of a company who demanded the platform to customize to their needs. So let's start with the company who embraced the low-code philosophy completely. Due to Corona, they needed to close their kitchen showroom. They got the news in the weekend. At Monday, they had an online brainstorm session, and they thought of an app that needed to be made in which customers could book an appointment with a designer. They needed to be able to choose between an online meeting or a meeting in their own house. Tuesday, the developer started to build the application, and it went live on Wednesday. So 2 full days from brainstorm to design to build to deploy. It's an example of a utopia, a company that fully understood and embraced the philosophy of low-code. Yet it's not a common ground in low-code projects. The other company wanted to be frontrunner in their league, the best innovating system to run their business, from purchase to sales, from stock to delivery. But the best thing should be the AI component to have less waste and make more of their stock by anticipating on orders. Low-code promised them all this: simple, fast, cheap, and good. Yet the company did not want to adjust their processes and workflows to the platform. They wanted all kinds of complicated customization, which were expensive but also contained a lot of risk. Adding high code to low code makes your application less in performance, and the odds on raising issues are increasing. The company was very disappointed in low code as it was not simple, fast, and cheap, and definitely not good. I'll come to that back again later. So, how can a company like this one be helped? Was low code just not for them? I would like to say it was for them, they just needed another approach on the matter. I think I found an approach that works. But first, let's dive deeper into the risks of citizen development. So, lots of companies, like the one I just mentioned, do not wish to adjust their processes and workflows and demand the platform will adjust to their needs. This means customization of the platform. Usually, this involves high code solutions. Well, this is not what the citizen developers in low code signed up for. So, what risks will you meet in customizing low code to the client's needs? Well, you meet risks in functionality, because citizen devs are no expert in best practices of development. Things like best practices in architecture, design, and deployment are new to them. How to make functionality that works as expected, as well as not adding unnecessary screens or functionality that may slow or affect the application in a wrong way. For example, in one application, a dev made a checkbox that was not possible to check. You needed to click a button somewhere on the screen and the box would be checked. Yet on another part of the screen, you needed to click to save your action. This is for a user, not logic. In another example, two different devs worked on building applications for two different departments. One worked for the purchase and one worked for the sales department. Because there was no architect and no manager overseeing the work, they could have used one application for both departments, but they didn't know. And in the end, we had two applications in one of two parts of applications in one big application that were not needed. You'll also meet risks in continuity. Citizen devs also struggle with continuity like performance, load, security, and version control. I will explain these. Low code has issues on performance that low-code platforms demonstrate good performance parameters on datasets that are average or low size. But there's no guarantee these will work for large datasets. The challenge lies in analyzing performance glitches and real-time production failures due to large datasets. This often leads to a bloated codebase. Making changes to improve performance might result in a complete overhaul at design level, which defeats the purpose of using a low-code platform. Security. Lower control of data and code coupled with the freedom to develop apps may lead to compliance issues and poor governance. Citizen developers may not be aware of compliance and regulations and thus may not adhere to the IT, business, and data governance requirements of the organization. This may result in the deployment of feature-rich applications that have complex underlying code and do not meet compliance requirements and expose data due to poor business logic. And load, multiple users, is also an issue. As an example, we had a client who wanted to have 10,000 students and employers use the application at the start of the college year in September. We did a load test and the application failed at 100 users. Peak load is definitely a risk in these platforms. To solve this risk, you need to find external solutions that need to be set up by a developer with external servers and high code. And deployment. Citizen devs are no expert in best practices of deployment. The deployment architecture of apps developed on low-code platforms has fewer options. Any tweaks made by citizen devs to customize the app can lead to possible failures in deployment due to incompatible integration with external components and environments. Version control is also something not every citizen dev will know how to do. So going back after a big bug is not as easy as it looks. Then usability. In low-code development, there are almost never architects or UX designers involved. A citizen dev has no knowledge how to have a clean and logic architectural landscape or how to make an application user-friendly, like how to make an app intuitive and easy to use, or to ask the right question, because is what the user asks also what he needs and wants? Drafting good requirements is very important. A business analyst is also necessary to support the citizen dev with building by drafting requirements. You need to have a clear view of what is necessary in the app, how it's supposed to be working before starting to build the app. You need blueprints, which architects and business analysts can help to acquire. The UX designer is needed to make the app look appealing, but also make the app accessible and WCAG compliant. Web content, accessible guidelines. So what should then be the focus points of testing low-code? As these were risks in the citizen development, in my humble opinion, these should also be the focus points of testing. Low-code development can go really quick, so testing needs to be in a short time frame as well. Important is we know a risk, so we need to do a product risk assessment every time. In functionality, we need to interview the stakeholders on what to build and check with the citizen dev he understands what needs to be done and thinks it is technically possible. When the developer starts building, we need to be ready by writing down scenarios to test as clean and clear as possible. For example, by making user stories and steps to follow the flows. For continuity, we need to test performance, load, security, and ask about version control and release notes with the dev. Besides those risks, it is important to think about interfaces, APIs, and data to test. Make sure everything works together and works safely. And for usability, can the application be used by all users? Again, is it WCAG compliant? Is there a uniform design in the use of icons and ways to work with the system? So low-code does definitely not mean low testing. Testing needs to be prepared well, and the tester needs to be more like a jack of all trades. So even if you do not have a very complicated environment for your low-code application, then you still have to test low-code applications. I'm making a bit of a sidestep here. Above, you see the low-code platform, and below you see a process from a company. But every company is unique. So every company needs to be aware that it needs to be tested for their own use. Because, for example, when you have a full library of widgets and models, one company may use 500 widgets and another company may use 500 other widgets. Every unique combination, every unique use is reason to test. I will show you more about this now. So, testing low-code. Here you see 4 layers of the most low-code platforms have these 4 layers. So, in my opinion, you don't have to test the standard functionality. Those are those widgets that are already tested by the platform. You do have to test how they work in your processes, in your business rules, and how they work with your data. But those standard functionality, you don't have to test. It would be like testing an application from the App Store. You'll play with it, you'll see if it's not too big for your phone and makes your phone slow, but you will not test the application. For processes and business rules and data migration, you do have to test those, because those are the unique implementation for your application. Besides that, we see that a lot of things go wrong in functionals like interfaces, identification and authorizations, and user administration, user management. Those are the biggest risks we see in our applications. Like people can't log in. We have now a single sign-on application. We see that the log off often doesn't work. So you think you're logged off. The screen says you're logged off, but you're not actually logged off at the external authorization. So on the local platform, you are logged off, but as it is single sign-on and your authorization app, in this case, Basisport, does think you're still logged on, the application will log you on as well because it's single sign-on, and as soon as you open the link through Basisport, you will at least still be logged on. So user identification and authorization is a big problem. Then the non-functionals, like I mentioned before, performance, security, privacy, usability, but also scalability. Is it usable on all the devices, load and accessibility? So then back to the jack of all trades. Due to the lack of experience of the citizen developer, low-code development needs a quality consultant. I think a role written for the tester, because a lot of companies do not want to use an architect, do not want to use a business analyst, and I think we can, at least for a part, help the citizen developer get more grip on those parts of his job. So if you stick to using standard modules for development on a platform, testing is not a big deal. You would be sufficient with regression tests, because it would be, like I said, buying an app in the Play Store. You will not excessively test that app. Only that's not all there is to it. When big apps are bigger and built by citizen developers, you often have interfaces, APIs, and you need to test those too. So, for example, I had a client that wanted a new ERP system, the one I said that didn't embrace the philosophy of low-code. And with that ERP system, they want to implement it while being fully operative and within 6 months. The problems were piling up in no time. Delay was inevitable. Why? Because people in that company needed to work together while never having to do that before. They needed to give specs on what the new system needed to do, something they did not know how to do. They needed to do that all on top of doing their daily job. The developers, on the other hand, were oblivious of these problems and had fought more access to the employers. They counted on the people's experience to work together in a project, not for one moment considering the impact of this for the employers of the client. And how about getting lost in translation? Because the client did not know how to state what the system needed to do, and the developers had no clue about the branch the client operated in. So we started there at a small company of only 16 employees. As free testers, we were supporting on so many levels: requirements engineering, project management, testing, go-to person when frustrated or clueless, agile coach, short, a quality consultant. Or as we like to say in Holland, we were the jack of all trades. again, sorry, the wrong mouse. So, as you might have noticed, is the good in the promise of low-code not a given? You need quite some additional help for the citizen developer to make a good and safe application. If you have no money or no mind to hire an architect, business analyst, or UX designer, you might want to use a tester, or as I call it, a quality consultant. As a quality consultant, I've drafted requirements, made product outline schemes, so I know a little about architecture, and as a tester and coordinator of user acceptance tests, know also quite a bit about design and usability. With that toolbox, I can help the citizen developer locate risks early in the development cycle. Low-code definitely does not mean low testing. Testing is not very different, but your focus points might be different, and most of the time you have less time to test and more tasks beside testing to help ensure quality of the application. So to keep up with low-code development, your testing needs to be simple, fast, and cheap without losing quality. So before I continue, I'd like to make clear the difference between testing low-code and low-code testing, because there is a difference. With low-code testing, you use a low-code testing tool like Curiosity, Mabel, or Testim. Most of these are easy-to-use tooling that help you test without need of knowledge of test automation or programming. You can most of the time use these to test low-code applications as well. Testing low-code means you are testing a low-code application. This can be by hand, by a testing tool, or by a low-code testing tool. Here we see an example of a low-code testing tool. By modeling your test flow visually, you can compile your test. You can add tables and data, parameters, test lanes, and code. Most of these tools can help you to test not only the low-code application, but also the interfaces and external applications that need to communicate or work with the low-code app. These kind of tools can be used as well in high-code environments and can help team members who are not technical to test automated. Not only very useful for testers, but also for business analysts, product owners, and users. So how to test simple, fast, cheap, and good? Well, to start, you will have prepare yourself well, as I told in the slides before, by making requirements, keeping risks like usability, security, and compliance in sight. But what about test automation? Well, the past few months, there were quite some developments on that in low-code. Platforms are making their own tooling, but also tools like Test Project or LeapWork are used. With these kind of tooling, you can have your regression testing done. Performance, load, and security testing are also more and more automated, but still high-coded. But without going too deep in the technical side of test automation, what can test automation do for low-code? I would say help making testing low-code simple, fast, and cheap. So I used a piece of cake to make clear that's what simple is. Simple because everyone can use the low-code testing tool. You can have stakeholders make tests, you can have users make tests, and with that, they can see visually what they are testing, how it works, and they get their own results. Running tests with one click at a time, exposing issues quickly. It means that when all the tests are together, anyone in the company can click and make the test run. There is less time and manpower required because it will be a team effort and not one person who will do it and will be hired just for that job. And good, because there's less chance on human errors or inconsistencies. It is not like you can forget to do a test because they're all together in the test suite. So what will be risks then? Because they're like citizen testers, you do need the quality consultant to oversee everything, to kind of manage the quality by looking also at coverage and focus. So to me, good in testing low-code means you have quality, coverage, and focus insight. Your focus is been laid down by your risk assessment. There you want to focus your testing. And you need to be sure you have a good test coverage, especially when more people are making the tests. the test quality consultant needs to oversee that everything is tested that needed to be tested. And is the quality ensured? So all this is best supervised by the quality consultant. Then stakeholders and users can be part of the testing as citizen testers, with the quality consultant as endpoint with responsibility to give an advice on quality. So yes, low-code can be simple, fast, cheap, and good with customization when your test automation is also simple, fast, cheap, and good, and is supervised by a quality consultant. It helps bring low-code and companies together because low-code and companies adjust to each other to complement each other instead of demanding from the other party to completely adjust. Test automation helps to keep the flow and keep the motto without compromising on quality. So that was my presentation. So I'll stop sharing so I can see Peter again.
Thank you very much, Marjolein. Very interesting presentation. We've had one question so far, but I would like to remind everybody, please put your comments in the chat channel or use the Q&A channel to ask questions. Bearing in mind, there are free books on offer for participation from Pact conference sponsor. So, Marjolein, this is the first question from my namesake, Peter. When would you not use a low-code approach? So obviously it's very attractive for many organizations, but when doesn't it make sense to use a low-code approach?
Well, in a way, you can do every application in a low-code environment. But what I see most is that companies who have a very complex environment want to change it all at once. So what I would do when starting with low-code is like the kitchen company did. Parts of your application you'll change. You start with an application to make appointments, then you'll make, so not change your whole environment at once. You see that there comes the big problems. If you change your system all at once, that's just too big for low code, and you need quite a lot of customization. So you need to quite try to keep away from the customization if you can, especially when you have a company who is not used in IT projects. And so low code is mostly for companies who know what they do in IT and have a very grown up IT department.
Thank you. So if I say what I heard from that then was that low code is not good for all those companies. It's certainly not if you're going to try and do a big bang, which is to transition everything in one go to low code, or in environments where you're going to need high levels of customization. And I think that was one of the points from your presentation, wasn't it? That if there's going to be lots of customization, it's going to add to cost, complexity, risk, and timescale. So you lose many of the advantages of low code. So thanks very much for that. I've got another question that's just come in. So it sounds like many of the testing principles needed in, let's call it a high code environment, still apply in low code, but is enough being done to make citizen developers aware of that? Do they know that they need to be thinking about the need for testing, its role, and how?
Well, it's like when I started in January, the citizen devs were not really aware. It's January 2019, I must add. So I worked very hard on that. And this year I also had a lot of contact with the platforms itself. And testing is getting known. And more platforms and more developers getting the need for testing is getting known there, but it's still very much in their infancy. You really need to go in. And now I've got an assignment where I'm very lucky, 3 citizen developers and 2 have a testing background. So with them, I have no issues. If I say I want to test this, they say, well, don't forget about this. So when citizen devs are previously testers, then you have also a very good citizen dev because they know more about quality and are more aware of quality assurance.
Thanks, Marjolein. So, slightly different perspective now. So we've talked about the developers, we've talked about the testers. When I talk to business executives, one of the things that they tend to think about low-code environments is, oh, there's no need to test. Surely the platform provider has done all the testing we need already. Isn't there a danger associated with that? And if there is, how do we make executives who are not professional testers or coders aware that there is still a need to test?
Well, that's funny because I recently had a appointment with a customer of one of the platforms we work together with, and he said just the same to the platform owner. And I said, well, if I buy a new car and I drive on the highway with it, then we have a keurings. I'm sorry, I don't know the English word, but when they check the car, they also every new car is checked. So I could think, well, I just drive and I don't care because the car's checked, it's safe. But still, I'm aware that some things might not go wrong. I check the brakes, and if I think there's something funny with the brake, I go to the garage. So not really knowingly, I'm still testing the car. I'm still checking if the lights are working, and it's the same when you buy an application. If you buy it off the shelf, it's different because then the company is actually fully, but still then you're checking, does it work for me? Is everything okay? But when you make your own app on a platform, it's like buying Lego, and you're still responsible for how you put the Lego together, or if the car is really working, and you need to go safely work with it.
Great, thank you very much. And another point that occurs to me is that very early in my career, I worked for Vodafone before the days of texting, and we didn't anticipate texting. It was something that the engineers did. You know, engineers texted other engineers. So one of the things that I'm aware of is that we tend to have a bit of a bias or a blind spot as humans. So this is my question. Is there a risk that low-code developers, citizen developers perhaps, only test for what they expect their application to do? And they don't think about those possible edge cases or the abuses. That is, they test for the way they think it's supposed to work and don't think, well, how might somebody else use this, or how might they break it?
Definitely. I also have that issue with some of my high code developers in the past, but this even more because they are developing and they know risks that citizen developers do not know of. And we like the bug I told, the checkbox. The developers thought, well, this is how the system works, and I can't make that checkbox work. And yeah, you have to press save, but once I explain that to a user, then it's clear, right? No, it's not clear. Next time I will forget it, that I need to check box and use 3 places on the screen to get that bug checked. So yeah, that's a discussion we have quite a lot with citizen developers. Like, but do you understand how it's going to be used? No, but nobody does that. Well, I just did it. So yeah, anyone can do that.
Thank you very much. And I think that that's, for me, one of the things I think as testers is always going to be the challenge, is that we have to get it right all of the time. But it's impossible to anticipate everything. As I say, when we looked at the emergence of text, nobody saw it coming. Nobody thought that that's was how it was going to be used. So,
No.
and yet suddenly it becomes what is now a multi-trillion-dollar industry of moving data around on what was at the time a voice platform. So I think that's an interesting one. Take your testing beyond the functional tests. That's what the platforms are great at doing, but you can use a chisel as a screwdriver. It's not good for the
Yeah.
screw and it's not good for the chisel, but nonetheless, it is possible to do that. So let me ask you a slightly different question then. And thank you very much, by the way, for the presentation. I found that super interesting, the way that this has evolved. But do you think that there are any characteristics that make for a good tester in a low-code environment? And is it any different from the characteristics that would make a good tester in a high-code environment?
Well, I don't think my work has changed when I went from high code to low code. I'm still the same tester. I love communicating with people, making sure that the business understands the developer and the developer understands the business. But the need to check with the developer is bigger. The developer is a bigger player for me. I really need to understand in how much grown up he is in developing. Because if he's a good developer because he has developed before, then I have less risk at his side. But if he's like really just starting and the platform says, well, I gave him a course of 6 weeks and I think he's okay, then I know enough, and then I need to take him by the hand and I need to check, because if he says I done it well, then I can't be sure that he did what he had to do. Other things like, I'm very busy, I don't have time for release notes. And then I ask again and again and again, says, yeah, but how do I need to make release notes? I don't know how to make them. And what do you want in those release notes? And oh, okay, well, I need them to test. This is what I need to have in them. So you really need to have an eye for the developer when you're testing low code. While in a high code environment, you might not need to, because you have a very grown up developer who really works together and knows his way around testing.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Marjolein. So I think there haven't been any more questions coming in, but I think you've actually answered for me that fundamental question. You know, simple, cheap, good, quick. Yes, you can have it, but it isn't simply waving a magic wand. That you
Yeah.
do need to think about the test environment, the test cases, and what you test for. And I tend to think that testers have to have a natural sense of curiosity, but they also have to have a sense of, you know, well, how might this work, or how might it go wrong, and to test those use cases. I also think that from what you've talked about, you've worked with some great people, and citizen developers bring a very diverse set of viewpoints to an environment, which I think is extremely useful, because I do think we often, as testers, there is a danger of confirmation bias. We go to
Yes.
find what we expect to find, and I think that that's dangerous. That's when we do find those unusual, unexpected things. So I just
Sure.
want to put one more question out. If anybody has got a question, now's the time to put it into Q&A. Otherwise we'll close in a couple of moments. But Marjolein, yeah, I started my coding career using Fortran 77. Actually, I was using assembler on hexadecimal with a very old chip at the time. The world has obviously changed an enormous amount in the last 40 years, but actually I think it's changed as much in the last 4 years as it has in the previous 36 of those 4 years. So I'm going to be really interested to see how these platforms evolve into the future, what they might look like. I'm also very interested in how we're going to have to get to grips with it. You talked about high data environments and dealing with mass data. And one of the things that has been problematic, I know, for a number of organizations is the use of AI and machine learning, in that it works well in the test environment, and then you take it out into the field where it's dealing with real people living real lives, and it perhaps doesn't always live up to expectations. So perhaps that's something you and I can talk about in the future at another conference. Other than that, we haven't had any more questions. So all it really remains for me to do is to say thank you so much, Marjolein,
Mm-hmm.
for a great presentation. Very useful. I'm going to go off and explore some of those tools. For the people watching, these sessions are being recorded, so you will be able to watch it back afterwards. But other than that, thank you very much, Marjolein, and goodbye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.